Today.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know about you, but I want to run out there and be part of that team. So I hope you all sign up. Well, for those of you who were here last week, you remember that we were all treated to something rather unique. And so I want to talk about that, especially for those of you who didn't join us. Reverend Scott invited each of us to participate in what I might call a reverse offering, where when the basket was passed around, instead of us popping in our offering, we were invited to take $5 and to go forth from our Sunday service to do some good in the world with that $5. And so we were invited to be creative and to really discern what all kinds of possibilities could be with that $5. And then once we were mulling that over and came up with some great ideas, we've been invited to share our stories at ripple@uufco.org. And today I'd like to share two of those stories with you. Our first story, and it's in their words. So we gave our money to someone near and dear to us. My cousin is a queer Black woman who works incredibly hard for her community. Not only is she pursuing her graduate education with a focus on making the world a safer and more equitable place for BIPOC children, but in her spare time, she protests in the city of Philadelphia. She is an incredible person and inspires us. We've given her the money and told her to give herself a treat or some self-care, because we know that she often puts others' needs before her own. We know that giving her the money to have a recharge will help fuel her efforts in making the world a better place, and also give someone we love a small treat. And we couldn't imagine a better way to celebrate the values of social justice that our church holds dear than to help someone who is changing the world. Thanks for giving us this opportunity. The second Ripple story I'd like to share with you. Taking the money and thinking about what it could do occupied much of my thought on the drive home. I had all these grand ideas about getting people together, finding a matching donor. Then I saw a man outside the grocery store with a sign that said, "Anything helps." I rarely give money to people with signs, but this seemed right. As I rolled down the window to hand him the money, I could see a light in his eyes, a strong light, apparently born of suffering, but it didn't seem to be angry. He said, "Wow, thank you so much. God bless you." So that's it. No huge movement, but a little less suffering for one cold person. So I don't know if you have gotten around to your Ripple story, what you imagine to do with your $5, but whatever it is, we have a whiteboard on the back that has more stories, and you can take a look at it after the service in the gathering hall. You're welcome to read some of those stories. And if you have participated, I encourage you to share your story at that same email address so that we may hear more and be inspired by more of them at ripple@uufco.org. Thank you.
I'm Amy Brock, and I'm the Director of Religious Exploration for Children and Youth. So if you are a children or youth or a young person at heart and you'd like to come and explore our story with us today, you can come and find a space on the carpet up front.
Good morning. My name is Erin, and I'm so excited to be here. And I brought one of my newest favorite books with me, and this happens to be by a local author named Banny Bunting. And in true teamwork style, I'm going to ask you to please hold this for me. How do you see the world? And I'm going to read an abridged version of this book this morning. How do you see the world? Sometimes I ask myself this question because I'm curious about asking questions, and this helps me understand better. So when you look around the world, how does the world look to you? Sometimes when I look around, it's like I'm seeing the world through different colored glasses. Sometimes I feel happy, as if wearing glasses with shiny yellow lenses. Everything is sunny and bright. The view is beautiful, and I feel hopeful. Smiling is easy, and feelings are good on my face. Nothing can bring me down. My glasses change sometimes. I feel confident, as if I'm looking through vibrant orange lenses. I feel strong, knowing anything is possible, and I feel alive. But then other times I can feel calm and confident, like I'm looking at the world through crystal clear glasses. It's easy to be me. Everything makes sense, and nothing seems to bother me. I feel confident and comfortable in my own skin, and I can see clearly. Being still and looking through these crystal clear glasses, I start to get it. I begin to understand that there are so many ways of seeing the world. It's not just through different colored lenses. I realize there might be some different types of lenses, a lens that can help me with all of my feelings, not so lost in color and not so overwhelmed by emotions. Maybe this different lens can help me with whatever I'm feeling, whether good or bad. Maybe I could choose to see the world through the lens of kindness. Being kind to myself and to others helps me feel happy, even when I'm sad, remembering me that I belong. Looking through a lens of kindness, I feel closer to everyone, even people I don't know. Kindness changes my view of the world, and it reminds me of how we are meant to be and treat one another. Or maybe I could choose to see the world through the lens of gratitude. Gratitude helps me feel thankful for all the good things in my life, rather than the worrying about all the bad. Gratitude helps me appreciate the things that I don't always stop to notice. Looking through the lens of gratitude helps me see the world differently, in a more appreciative way. Or maybe I could choose to see the world through the lens of forgiveness. I learned to forgive myself and others for not being perfect and for making mistakes, knowing that mistakes are just part of being human. Forgiveness teaches me that I don't always have to take things personally. It helps me remember my own goodness and sees the good in others. I might even consider that forgiveness is as much a gift to myself as it is to others, helping me feel at peace in the world. Or maybe I could choose empathy. I could see the world through the lens of empathy. Empathy helps me relate to the feelings of others, putting myself in their shoes. Looking through the lens of empathy, I can see that our similarities rather than our differences, and helps me focus more on that. Wait a minute, we're missing one lens, and it must be the most important of all. What about the lens? We could choose to see the world through our own hearts. What would happen then? Would we feel more connected to one another? Would choosing a lens of love help us be closer together? I'm curious what happens when you are mindful and notice the lens that you choose. Do I slow down and notice? Am I open-minded? Am I my own best friend? I'm kind. I am patient. I am understanding. I hear you and I see you. I am happy. I am calm. I am curious. I am forgiving. And I am compassionate. I see the world. Your job now is to choose your favorite way to see the world. Do you choose to show kindness? Do you choose to show empathy? And do you choose to love each other?
We're going to explore that a little bit more in our RE classes today, but before we do that, we need to say our covenant. Will you help me say that? In this place, I am kind. In this place, I am loving. In this place, I am a friend to the earth and all animals and people. In this place, I am loved.
As you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go, as you go, as you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go, as you go, as you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go.
our joys and sorrows in community. Anyone is free to light a candle in one of the trays along each side of the sanctuary during this time. I'm going to draw attention to the lovely tulips. This is in honor of women's rights all over the world. Indeed a joy. From Chela Sloper, a great joy. After 2 years of craving contra dance during COVID, I have been twice now. Last night I called 2 dances. Contra dancing, yeah. And a sorrow flavored with joy. Dear friend, spiritual guide, and member of UUFCO, Stephen Biesman, completed his earthly assignment on Monday. He was so ready to leave his body behind. In good times and in bad, it is good to be with one another in community. The Culture of Care team will lead us in a meditation.
Yes. Good morning. Remember, we belong to each other. This is a meditation adapted from Ruth King. Take a moment to turn inward and soften or close your eyes. Settle in here and just notice what is happening, what your experience is like right now. Perhaps there is a sense of curiosity, wondering, a flickering. Maybe you feel a sense of heat or pulsing. Just allow the awareness to be there as you relax more into the body here and now. Perhaps noticing the experience of settling here, relaxing into each inhale. Really taking your time to feel the release of the breath and the body. Now, as you soften here, connect with the stillness in the body. Connect with the stillness that surrounds you. Take your time here. Connect with the silence of the body and the silence that surrounds you. Soften with the breath. Notice the movement of the breath and the stillness of the body. May we see the world with quiet, loving eyes. May we remember that we belong to each other. I belong to you. You belong to me. I am you, and you are me. And yet we forget the truth. My belonging is tied to your belonging, and your belonging is tied to mine. Your heart and my heart are very old friends. May we heal the seeds of separation inherited from our ancestors in gratitude for this life. And may our thoughts and actions be ceremonies of well-being in service to all of humanity. May we see the world with quiet, loving eyes. And in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Day tomorrow, love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy to a friend.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm excited to hear your message and about your work. Again, this is the Culture of Care team at the High Desert Educational Support Agency. There are a series of agencies throughout the state of Oregon that are charged with supporting public education within their region. And these folks do the good work of building a culture of care. I would just, maybe if we could just start with, do we have our mic? We don't have our mic, do we? If we could start with an introduction of yourself and a little bit about the work you do. Nolan and Jonathan, there are slides with images. If you guys have an opportunity to kind of work with that slide deck, that would be great, and above and beyond. So, thanks.
Thank you. Good morning. Yeah, we can do maybe brief introductions of each of us. So Amber McGill, my background is in social work. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed school social worker. And we'll talk a little bit about the work that we do, but my passion and focus is really around looking at things at a systems level. How do we shift to more equity-centered systems that serve and support the groups that we've historically oppressed and marginalized in education?
Good morning. My name is Erin Taylor. My passion for our work is very much around getting tools and strategies in the hands of teachers who need them. We talk about trauma-informed practices, but what does that actually mean, and what does that look like in practice?
Good morning. I'm Dr. Amy Yillick, she, hers. My work centers around really the neurobiology of trauma, how it impacts our functioning. But then my passion lies in once we see the world with a trauma-informed lens, which changes the work from, just seeing like who are those crazy people to, what happened to those people. That becomes heavy-hearted work. And so my goal is to support people who see the world that way with being able to take care of themselves and continue to do the work long-term.
And as Dirk said, we are charged with serving the entire region of Central Oregon. So we serve all 6 school districts, bringing that trauma responsive, restorative, and equity-centered lens. And so that looks like a lot of staff trainings, professional development, coaching, observation, support, brainstorming, troubleshooting with leaders, building partnerships in our community so that not only our students and families, but the adults in our education systems experience that sense of belonging and safety.
Awesome. Thank you. I wonder if you could describe to us what is, for a school that is experiencing these systems systematically and systemically, what would be different? What's different in a school that's informed with the practices that you folks teach?
I think more inclusive disciplinary practices as opposed to traditional disciplinary practices. Instead of saying you've done something wrong or we're going to send you home, we're saying, you know what, we love you enough to keep you here and to work through whatever difficulty you're going through.
I think also understanding the fundamentals of behavior. All behavior is some form of communication. So understanding right now our youth are struggling more than ever after having spent 2 years home in the pandemic. So many of them from working families that parents, so I completely understand. I can't even imagine being a parent at this time if I would have had small children. And so many of our youth were being raised by technology and very isolated. So we're seeing behaviors that are unprecedented, not only in our region, but really across the nation. And so understanding what that behavior means and how to support that. And then also supporting themselves in the process.
I think the difference is also that there's a proactive approach to building community. It's not just responding when we have issues and trying to run around and put out fires, which there are plenty to put out on a daily basis, but investing in that building culture and like establishing routines and rhythms, predictable environments, so that again, the students as well as the staff have a sense of what to expect. They know that they're cared for, they're seen, they're known, they're valued. And then when we have an issue, we have that to kind of lean back on. We know we have investment in our community. So when there's harm done, we have investment to make it right.
Excellent. Good, thanks. This is a kind of imagining, we're a progressive faith, we're a community that advertises that and aspires to that, but we recognize that there are members of our community who organize in favor of traditional values and social institutions, and I wonder how has your work been received? I mean, there are a lot of people who have those values centrally in Central Oregon. I'm curious about how your work has been received in communities.
Overall, I would say it's been really well received. I think something that we have learned is that there's certain phrases and words that can be triggering to folks, and that there's assumptions about what this means, and we all have a different definition or understanding, and a lot of times folks outside of education have certain ideas about what's happening inside the school buildings, and if you're in it day to day, you have a very different experience. So we're trying to bridge those gaps, and sometimes I don't even use certain words just to, like, we want all kids to feel loved and valued. Like, most people are on board with that, and so how do we find that common ground? That this is actually what we're trying to build, is that connection, community, and safety. And I think when we lead with that message, it's been received really well.
And I think I'm somebody who comes from more of that traditional background. I'm very much, as a psychologist, I kind of had the perspective of the love and logic and tough love, right, with kiddos, that here are the behavior, here are the consequences, that's how we teach kids. But in my role, I was a psychologist in the Ben Lapine schools for almost 17 years, and one of my main jobs was to kind of intervene if a child did or said something that was kind of scary to the adults around them. My job was to meet with them and kind of talk about, what's going on? Are you really a threat to yourself or to the school? And what I found is that the traditional approach that we had of consequencing kids and sending them home wasn't working. These kids were continuing to come back with the same behaviors. And so over time, learning about restorative work, which is really just relationship-centered work, I have drank the Kool-Aid, and I am a believer, because we have to do something different. What we have been doing in the past doesn't work. We don't have the same culture and kind of family systems that maybe we did 30 years ago. And so we don't necessarily, when we send a child home as a consequence, that family may or may not support the same values and systems that we do, and there may not be a lot of learning about that bad behavior or poor behavior. So I feel like the work that we do is really about teaching, right? Teaching kids new ways to belong and behave so that they can stay in school and get an education. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
And just to add, I think a phrase that I've been using lately is that if time and punishment worked to change behavior, then our prisons would be full of really restored, redeemed, healthy folks. And so it looks like we need to do something more, right? Something deeper. Where is the healing? What does the healing look like? And how do we invest in that versus just, here's the punishment, do it, and expect a different outcome?
Super. Thanks. I wonder, you kind of addressed, I was wondering about the place of consequences. Obviously, after things go wrong, all of this front loading has gone on, community has been built, kids are anxious to get back. Are we doing away with consequences? How does consequences figure in? And I use consequences very loosely.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay, I'll start chiming in. Reach for the mic if you want something. So no, the consequences sometimes are required, especially for safety situations. Like we're not saying, and this is how I think the restorative work has gotten a bad name, because it's just like, now there's no accountability, no consequences, like, right? There's that punishment that we used to like, we feel good about, like, well, they have to pay, like they have to feel it. And so I think there's a balance of saying what needs to happen for safety and for, sometimes there's policies and laws in place that we can't get around. It's more about how do we welcome back folks? How do if a kid throws a chair at a teacher, they have some fallout and then they, get suspended, and then 3 days later they have to come back and be in that classroom for the rest of the year and just kind of avoid eye contact with the teacher. Like what is gonna happen? There's no repair that's happened. It's more that you've done your time, now you can come back and things should be different. So I think that idea of, you still may have to be out for a couple days, right? But we're also working with schools to build alternatives. Like, is it, okay, there's a suspension, or are you willing to have a community circle and own what you did and hear how it impacted others and make a plan of how you're gonna move forward to make it right? Or is it just you do your time out and then you come back and we have a conversation and a plan with that teacher and you, and how you two are going to live together, right, in the same classroom for the rest of the year. So I think we're trying to give more options, knowing that there's some consequences that are going to happen, but we know that that's not all that needs to happen.
And I think about what our traditional consequences are as sending a kid home from school. Well, if a kid really does not find success in school, sending them home from school is actually a life raft. So we actually go about reinforcing the very behaviors we're saying we don't want in the classrooms by sending them home. And it's actually harder on the student to stay and to really start to show ownership for the behavior that they exhibited. And that is far more powerful than just sending them home.
We've just got an image up on the board. Do one of you like to address kind of what we're looking at, perhaps?
Sure, I will. So this is the Restorative Practices Continuum. So it's this idea of the work when we go into schools to say we want to build this restorative culture, moving away from that punitive kind of punishment-based. There is a continuum of what are the actual practices and work. What does that look like? The activities. So on the left, you'll see moves from informal to formal on the right, and in the green, tier 1, which means that's something for everyone. We want to build that. Everyone gets that experience in our building. So that's affective restorative language. Being with folks. So that's how we use our words, how we show up. What's the environment we create by how we speak to people? Like, stop it, knock it off, that kind of language, moving away from, wow, this is how this makes me feel. This is how what you did impacts me. Like when you do that, I feel really not listened to or disrespected, versus stop it, right? Like moving our language into that more restorative and showing impact and less shaming. And then proactive circles are also in that green, where it's, again, building cultures that, staff meetings and classrooms have this rhythm of like, we open with a circle, giving everyone a chance for their voice to be heard. Maybe we close with a celebration or appreciation, but there's this sense of we have a circle where we can see everyone and hear everyone. And we want to build that just into day-to-day culture. Moving to the tier 2, this is a smaller group. This is kind of more responsive when we need to say something in the moment, pull someone aside, again, using restorative language, and then having responsive circles. So this may be, we've gone into schools where there's been a local tragedy or loss. So we need to meet with the staff, give them space to respond and to share how this is affecting them and what they need. Or again, there's some conflict or something's going on that we need to sort of circle up and have a conversation. And then that tier 3 is the formal conference. So that is, a smaller group of people. That's when there's been a serious incident that needs to be handled. And again, we bring all affected parties together. So imagine someone coming back from a suspension or a fight or something, and we have, parents and family members and support people of the person who did the harm and the person who was harmed, the community that's affected, and then that's where we have a conversation and make a plan for how to make things right. So there's, on every level, there's some way we can be building into the culture a more restorative approach. And then I guess the other, go ahead. I was going to say the other part is the 80% is proactive and 20% responsive. So if we're always responding, we're doing it wrong. The majority of our time should be investing in that proactive community building.
Right, and just to follow up with that, I think when we hear the words restorative justice, we think of that formal, that little red part on the diagram, that formal conferencing where, there's been some big incident and we come back together and we have a discussion. But my partner here so eloquently says, like, what are we restoring it to, right? If we have a restorative conference, woo, it's a party now. If we have a restorative formal conference, what is it that we're trying to restore to? We have to have that foundation of relationship and belonging to start with. And so that's that tier 1 and tier 2 level is just about community building and connection. Creating a safe environment where people feel heard and valued and part of a system so that when we are able to say, hey, you made a misstep here, that they feel safe enough to say, oh, you're right, how can I do it different, right? Rather than, I didn't do that, or forget, it's you, it's not me. So we're changing behavior.
Erin, if there was one thing that you would want a message about your work at the culture of, on the culture of care team that you'd like to deliver to our community, in closing, what would your hope be? And then I'll go to Amber and Amy too.
For me, it's realizing that this is heart work. And when we shift from working harder to working with our hearts, it is more laborious on our staff. And we as a community have to circle up and support our folks in the trenches of education, because they are, when you see what trauma does to the individual's brains that we're working with, you can't unsee that and you can't undo that learning. And it just makes the work heavier and it makes it harder on their hearts. So really thinking about how do we as a community circle up and support our educators that are in the trenches is really important.
So when I think about the state of our world right now, a little tense out there, right? Regardless of what side you're on. And truly, I believe the only way that we're going to be able to heal is to be able to come together and have conversation. And we have to do that in a way that's civil, with respect and kindness. And I feel like we're missing that. I don't know if you sense that too, but I feel like we're missing that currently. And that our work helps not only the educators, but the youth in our community start to develop that sense of civility and connection and belonging so that we can sit down and have those hard conversations without it being isolating, right? So that we can be inclusive. And I'm hopeful that I read your 7 principles of your organization, and it so aligns with the work that we do. And so my heart is very full today to see all of you here, knowing that that is also your mission, is to create belonging and hope for the people in our community.
I think one thing I would leave you with and kind of charge you with is about creating and holding space. One of the greatest or most frequent requests that we've gotten as a team is just to hold space where there's conflict, to have a set of agreements and a calmness, a steady presence that is, as Amy said, is not very common right now in the world, that we can come in and bring some boundaries and some safety and say, we're going to have this conversation with respect. We're going to listen to each other. We're going to hear what's hard, even if we don't agree, and come up with a plan of how, again, to live in this world together, in our building together, whatever that looks like. So as we hold that space in school buildings and across our region in education, would you find that space in your life where you can hold that space and be that non-anxious presence, that non-judgmental, supportive person, that wherever you show up, you bring that presence with you?
Thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today. It was wonderful hearing from you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
your spirit to join our closing song, 1028, the choir of commitment.
From the light of days remember, birds awaken bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faiths and free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, when our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living brings a song of brave and true, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. From the fire of commitment sets our mind and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, when our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, when our promise finds fulfillment and our future can
Please remain standing and join me in the unison reading of our covenant as we extinguish the chalice. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I'd like to close with a prayer from the Christian tradition by St. Francis of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.